Straight from the crow's nest, this day comes the new and approved Avian's Paragraphs. I'm Zan Marsh, and thank you for joining me on this fine day. Now, before we get into the show, there are two quick pieces of birdness I need to get out of the way. Unfortunately, Martin Salinas has been spotted telling a few fibs this episode, and refers to raccoons as rodents. So I am again left picking up the pieces and must apologize on Martin's behalf for his egregious error. As I am sure even the dullest of listeners knows by now, the raccoon is a member of the carnivora order, not rodentia as Martin was under the impression of there. This I looked up on mentalfloss.com, so check it out yourself. There's a great article on there by the Miscellanea. It's called Rodent or Not Rodent. Second order of birdness covers an apology made by me on the show. I will now be forced to formally retract the apology. Unfortunately, both Tim and Martin got this one wrong, so my apology must be retracted. So when I apologize in the episode, you'll hear this sound. Instead of my apology, again, this sound. Will play instead of my apology. Okay, and with that, we hope you enjoy this show in beautiful Eagle Cap, Oregon. And let's get on with the show. Avian Paragraph is brought to you by Pacific Thought Foods and Borzoi Books, as well as viewers like you. Thank you so much. Welcome to all the birders out there, and potentially other people as well, as we cordially invite you to the mottled lakes of the Eagle Cap Wilderness in the beautiful Wallowa Mountains of eastern Oregon. Around us now are many trees, somewhat similar to Venus, Washington in that respect, and the beautiful golden light of an Oregon sunset here in Oregon, Washington. Oregon. Just Oregon. And it is green and gold again. I actually planned on doing this introduction when the sun was up, and it would have been gold because of the beautiful sunset we were experiencing, but it is a little bit darker now, so not green and gold, but maybe AP after dark. We won't come out until the lights are out. So this is Aviary Paragraphs Eagle Cap Special. And I will be your perfect guide to this birder's paradise as host. Zan Mars, of course. I have with me, as always, birding pros, Martin Salinas.
Doing great today, Zan.
Well, that's good to hear. And Timothy Lequi. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be here.
That's fantastic. And I expect that you would say that. So as we continue on, we'll have to go through what we're going to be doing today. What is it, you ask? Well, it's a full nest, as they will say. It's called Zan's Birding Book of the Week. We'll be doing this from now on, reviewing the different birding books that are out there, the literature that, as a birder, you most likely should be reading. Next, we'll be going into a birding buffet, where we go into other things and hide etiquette, as well as a new game. It's called Grouse, Gull, or Maple. And of course, we have Mind of a Bird, and Tim's going to tell us a few of his new birding tales. Tim, do you have anything to say about that?
Not too much to say about that. I'm kind of going back through my memory and trying to pick out a couple highlights from a great summer birding.
Sure, yeah. So, do you only bird summers now? You're saying it's
I think for this episode, since it is summer, that it'd be appropriate to choose a story to tell that actually occurred this summer.
So you're not going to tell any stories that occurred during a different season, obviously.
That's correct.
And could you give us a sneak peek, perhaps, on what the story is going to be about?
No.
You wouldn't feel comfortable doing that right now. That's
I don't
fine.
want to spoil the surprise.
Yeah. Understood. And Martin, anything to tell us about what we're doing here today?
Well then, we are set up at beautiful Douglas Lake, and as you described, we are kind of on that cusp of the golden hour and the time when owls kind of start to come out here, maybe sometime around dusk. The water is like glass, and trout are hitting the surface right and left. We've had a wonderful afternoon surrounded by mountain chickadees and red-breasted nuthatches and even a few warblers, which frankly, I don't know about you, Tim, but I was a little surprised to see up here at, I believe, maybe don't pull out your topographic maps, but I think we're at about 7,600 feet here in the Wallowa Mountains. Yes, Martin, it's fall migration is on, and so the warblers are moving through the landscape, and it's interesting that they would find themselves at such a high elevation.
One thing to add to that, I should say, I don't want to change the subject from birds as this show is about birds, but I was thinking when you were saying that trout were jumping in the pond, I was thinking, is this a fishtail? Because actually my back is turned to the pond, but then I will say when I turned my back to the lake, Lake Douglas, there were actually trout fishing, so you weren't lying to the viewers with that. And so I think we should go on to our first segment now, Zane's Birding Book of the Week. And this week, which is our first week with this particular segment, we're reviewing Sibley's Guidebook. So my review on Sibley's Guidebook, I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm going to kind of give you the case against the cornerstone on this one. I would say not a great book.
Zane, I got to jump in. Did you say you were going to say that Sibley's, that you weren't that into Sibley's?
Well, I think there are alternative resources out there. I think it's been eons that we've had birders using Sibley's as their referential material when they're looking to ID a bird.
You know, and I've heard that about
some fresh blood.
I've heard that about Peterson's, maybe even in Nat Geo. But honestly, Sibley's, short of Crossley, Sibley's is in some ways a newcomer on the block. Just a little curious about the research and how you maybe compared to Sibley's to other books to come up with that.
Well, I see. When I was doing this, it was more of a feeling, and not as much research was involved.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those alternative resources that you preferred to Sibley's. Could you give us some examples?
Well, there is DK Press. Actually, they released a book. It's called Bird Watchers. I would check that one out. It has a lot of resources for the up-and-coming bird watchers.
Now, Zane, will we find those in the birding section, or is that in the children's books?
No, that's going to be in the birding section. I think that's pretty obvious. I will say also...
Isn't DK a science publication?
Well, I think we should focus less on DK and more on Sibley's, because that's what this segment is about. And Sibley's, quite frankly, it was much too wordy. There were no pictures. There wasn't a single picture in my copy of Sibley's guidebook.
Tim, is your heart rate elevated? Are you talking about photographs, or does the word picture include illustrations by your definition?
I was, from page to page, I was turning the pages, and all I saw was writing, twisted nuthatch this, red-crested nuthatch that. I mean, there was nothing in there really that was an illustration or anything like that. Kind of a snore.
Interesting because...
And I think birders need to enjoy what they're doing. I think they deserve to have these illustrations and not have to muck through all this writing about the subject.
Now, for our listeners who I'm sure are aware of...
It's boring. It's boring. The book is it's boring.
One of the most cohesive guides to North American birds, of course, is the Sibleys, given the fact that David Allen Sibley did indeed illustrate every single illustration in the book.
Not in my copy.
Whereas other guides would use a composite of a variety of artists, which often led to a kind of disjointed feel. Different artists had different takes on how to sort of showcase certain aspects of birds, be it beak size or certain colors, whereas David Allen Sibley maintains sort of a true character through each illustration. And as you learn the logic behind how those are illustrated, you really get a deeper appreciation for birding as a whole. So I just kind of wanted to add that, maybe to temper Zan's clearly maybe unresearched opinion.
I would say that ultimately a lot of this back and forth here seems to be misguided on your part. I'm going to leave it at that. I think it might be a case of agree to disagree. But again, the Sibley's guidebook, it's something like $30, something $29.95, something like that.
And you can find that at any bookstore near you.
Yeah, but if you did, I would say maybe put it in the trash at the bookstore, because that shouldn't be on the shelf. It should be somewhere else.
Next week, Jan, maybe have you looked at the Sibley's app at all?
That's an interesting thing. Perhaps maybe we'll do a Zane's Birding app of the week another week, but that's not this week. So maybe we should continue on to the next segment. And with that,
this is Avian Paragraph, and we'll be back after a short break.
All right, welcome back, and here we are again, here at Douglas Lake. Tim, have you seen anything on the water since we've been here lately? Any shorebirds or anything like that?
No, I have not seen any birds on the water, but I will comment right now. The lake we're sitting next to is glassy smooth, with the exception of a few tiny trout jumping out on the lake, and it's quite lovely.
Do you like that sort of thing, or is that something you're into?
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty into it.
Oh, that's great. So going ahead with our show, our next subject is kind of a funny one, birding buffet. So if you do have an appetite, I'd say temper that appetite, because we're going to be talking food.
Everybody loves food, including the birds. Yeah.
So yeah, that's true. What do you think that the sort of food that we like to put out for the birds? So we have so many different foods that we're going to be putting out for birds, but obviously not every bird is going to like every food. I put out some almonds. Where I live, I actually have a pretty big deck, and I put out some almonds and deli meat, and actually did not attract any birds. Interesting thing, I'd say there are specific foods that you're going to want to put out. So it's not any old food. So Martin, have you ever reached into I'm assuming you do have a refrigerator at your house, right?
I do.
Okay, so have you ever reached in there, maybe pulled out a food at random and tried to put it out for a bird to eat, perhaps?
Zan, I did indeed at one time have a rotisserie chicken that was only partially eaten, and I knew that some tubers or turkey vultures had been moving through the area and kind of wanted a closer look. So this, it had kind of gotten what we call in the danger zone, this chicken. Had been left out a little too long, and I don't add meats to my compost, so I thought, well, I'll set it out in the yard, and maybe before a raccoon or some other rodent gets to it, I could attract a turkey vulture, and indeed, actually did draw in a turkey vulture in my very own backyard there.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. So, moving on, I think that we're going to be talking more about the setup of the birding buffet. So, I like to call them birding buffets, but obviously we are talking mainly about feeders and suet feeders. What type of grubs or raspberries, anything you put out for these birds that they like in particular, or?
Well, one favorite of mine to put out, I would say, are mealworms. Those are a
It's
big,
kind of gross, though, right?
maybe to people, but to a thrush or any insectivore, quite delicious. So I like those for bluebirds. Robins will eat those.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Tim, have you ever tried, I mean, just out of curiosity, if it ever got the best of you, have you ever tried any of the, I know it's, I'm not advocating this for any listeners, this is not human grade food, but just curious if you have indeed tried any of that bird food that you put out for birds.
Well, I'd like to say that I had never done that, but I must admit those suet cakes do look pretty tasty sometimes, and I've definitely found myself going in for a nibble here and there.
Yeah, I've got to say, Tim, that I actually have indeed done the same thing. Again, listeners, we are not advocating that you do consume any bird seed or bird suet or any other variety of bird food that you may find, as these are not human grade foods. But I'll say probably the most intense experience that I had eating bird suet was I had purchased some squirrel-proof suet that is very, very spicy as a deterrent to the squirrels. And I mean, call it curiosity, call it just sort of the good old scientific method. I wanted to observe and test my hypothesis. So I took maybe a bit too healthy of a bite of that squirrel-proof suet, and needless to say, there was no more milk left in my house.
Yeah, I mean the forest nut flavor I do find being quite tasty.
Sure.
I've found myself taking a bite or two. Almost kind of peanut buttery texture and taste. It's really quite nice.
Now, Zane, I also just want to kind of comment on the fact that we are calling this a birding buffet, which I think speaks well to the fact that some people think about feeding birds as putting out a bird feeder, or simply putting out maybe the same, replicating that bird feeder in the same kind of seed. But a true birding buffet, I think, is a good mixture of maybe hummingbird feeders and feeders for sparrows and other small songbirds, as well as suet feeders for woodpeckers, which will eventually lead to one of the more controversial aspects of a birding buffet, which is the tertiary scale. At which point you get things like Cooper's hawks or sharp-shinned hawks coming in and actually feeding on the birds, which you have attracted to your feeders. So I don't know, has that happened to you, Zan or Tim?
That has once before, not my thing. Usually I'll try and put out there, they have a product called Scary Eyes that will stop different birds from coming around so that they don't, their feces can be also a problem. So I put those out and the feeders out, and not as many birds come into my yard anymore, actually, but the feeders, they are pristine. They are the cleanest feeders I've seen around. Also, just to know, I think there is a historical basis of suet eaters here in America. There was something known as pemmican back in the day, and many people would eat it as a ration during wartime. And that was made out of fat and seeds. So you're not alone in terms of these suet eaters.
But again, we are not advocating to those listeners out there that they purchase any bird suet thinking that it is a replacement for pemmican. If you are going to try pemmican, we highly recommend doing so with the guidance of a trained historical reenactor.
But with the caveat that some of those flavors of suet are quite tasty, if you are so inclined.
Now, do you find yourself ever putting out large foods, Tim? Ever? Because my experience is that when I put out large foods, larger birds come and they eat those foods and then just run off with them. Because I actually am on the basis where, although I said my feeders are pristine, by my feeders I mean a bench outside of my house, because I'm not actually using feeders. I'm just putting the food directly on a bench because I think it's just better. You get more action that way.
Well, I do like, if you're trying to target jays for feeding, lining up a few peanuts, and then they get the joy of cracking open that nut and gobbling up the sweet
Wow, yeah, I never
nut
thought of it that way.
inside.
Right, definitely.
Zane, any issues with rats? I know some bird enthusiasts or bird watchers.
Well, I do have a rat problem, but I just put out rat traps, and that solves the problem. And we'll be right back.
Hello, this is Darwin Quinn from Indoors Reimagined. And when I'm outside in my backyard enjoying birds like Zern Marsh or Marcelinus or even Timothy Leckwe, you'll likely catch me inside, basking under the warm glow of a fireplace, my computer, or my lovely duvet. That's right, just like you, I am inside for some time. Whether inclement weather, pestilent creatures, or noisy neighbours, why not give inside a chance, so that we can all stop the spread? After all, what else do you have to do outside? But while you're in there, I would encourage you to take some time out for reflection. After all, you deserve it, and that's what outdoors inside is like. Outdoors reimagined to indoors will change your space, change your life, change your reality. So come join us, outdoors, indoors, or any old place, here at Indoors Reimagined. This is Darwin Crin, and you have yourself a great day.
Welcome back, listeners. Here we are again. We were just talking about something funny on the break. We were just talking about something very funny during the break. Tim, do you remember what we were talking about?
Well, Zan, in these days of cancel culture, you really can't be too careful about what you say on the air, and I'd hate to have to see you go through that.
Sure.
And while we're on the topic, I'm going to go ahead and take a plunge into something that is probably undoubtedly going to get us into a little bit of trouble here, but I think it's just still important that we talk about. So Zan, Tim, with your permission, if I've piqued your curiosity, maybe I could dive into this topic a little bit.
Have at it, my friend.
Yes, please.
Well, one thing we haven't mentioned for our listeners is that we are indeed recording this Eagle Cap special on September 11th, and which, of course,
A very important date.
is a very important date. World-changing event, of course, happened when the World Trade Centers in New York City did indeed collapse. Over 3,000 Americans perished that day. Undoubtedly, total tragedy. So in the wake of September 11th, which I think in some ways I'm going to say, a tragedy and is somewhat of a separate issue here, the country chose to honor sort of the victims of that horrible day by erecting two towers of light where the World Trade Centers had been. Those light towers were so bright, and here they were in September, right in the middle of fall migration, that it was actually drawing birds from miles away around these towers of light. And Audubon, believe it was Audubon, it could be mistaken. Some birding group kind of came out and made a bold move by
A stink, so to say. Yeah.
basically, and said we need to turn these towers off during migration, which includes September 11th. Now, there was some agreement in the specifics of the agreement. I'm not entirely sure on listeners. You
Hopefully,
check that out
though,
for
the
yourself.
towers are on. Hopefully.
I think in this case for the birds, it's hopefully they aren't on.
But ultimately, sometimes it's not about the birds as well. So we need to remember there is a lot to remember there. But I think the thing is that I was with this joke conversation, I was trying to move us over to our next segment, which is that of hide etiquette. And what I was bringing it into before we went on to discuss the events of 9/11 and ultimately these lights that are potentially killing thousands of birds, that we talk about something perhaps less difficult to discuss. So with your permission, I think we're going to move on, Martin.
I think lightening up this conversation, Zan.
I think
would be a
we
choice
went to a
move.
dark place right now.
I really do. And
Tim, anything to say about that? Or?
Yeah, it's a tough subject for everybody. That was an awful attack.
Sure.
But
So let's go on to hide etiquette.
Let's
then,
move on.
Ultimately, I think. And what I was getting at with the segment segue was joke telling and laughter in a hide.
well, Zan, what are we talking about? A hide?
A hide would be.
Do you mean a blind?
Well, a hide and a blind, I mean, they're synonyms to each other. A hide is a little different, but...
Not sure. Tim, maybe you can weigh in on this one, but I'm not sure that they are synonyms. I believe it's a blind.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm familiar with the term hide.
Well...
in the context of
As a
birding.
noun.
But, well, see, a blind is where you'd go to look at the birds in sort of a structure, whereas the hide, you make your hide, and you hide in there looking at the birds. So it's more about hiding with a hide, whereas a blind, you're blinding yourself by seeing so many of these beautiful birds. And so when you are inside of a blind, a lot of things happen, like, things that can distract birds. I mean, we have, for instance, crinkly foods can be a real issue. What I do when I make my hide, I take branches and sticks and brambles and set them up in a sort of a triangular formation with a little room inside for two men.
Now, the last time I was making a hide with you, Zan, is you did make the mistake of bringing in a lot of Himalayan blackberry, which ended up being very uncomfortable with.
But it did provide you with
thorns.
the purpose was to provide us with food as well as cover, which is something I was about to go into. So when we are doing the 24-hour run, we're going to be in that hide for a long time. So I've made this blackberry bush sort of structure, and there's enough room in there, just enough room for two men, one squatting over the other, one man kneeling down, the other man squatting above. And ultimately, during this 24-hour run, you'll need to sleep in shifts. And there's kind of a little dance I like to do inside the hide. Not an actual dance, but it can be a dance to move around
A little bit of a birder's shuffle.
Right, sure, yeah, a birder's shuffle. I think that's a good term. But do you guys have any? You guys are the pros, obviously. Do you have any tips for any birders out there who want to improve their stalking skills?
Yeah, I mean, for those birders that maybe aren't on the younger side, I would say sometimes when you're in the middle of stalking or spending time in a hide, the joints can really stiffen up, and so I highly recommend bringing some unscented topocerin as a product that I really enjoy using. Just rub it on there and keep myself able to kind of stay mobile even when I'm having to kind of lock in that squat position for hours on end.
There was another product you were telling me about earlier today. I think it was called boron syrup that you've been adding to your feet in order to stop blisters. And so blisters can be a problem to hide. Would you recommend boron syrup for that as well?
Yeah, Zan, actually don't know what boron syrup is. Haven't heard of that before. I do use other products.
Oh, yeah. Well,
prevent
what was
blisters.
the product? Maybe I got the wrong name here, but lighten my load, so to speak.
Yeah, so I use kind of a mixture. I really, for my toes, I have maybe the beginnings of hammer toe, and so I'll use chamois butter.
Okay, a little bit too much information. Perhaps Tim has something to say on this one.
On what now?
On hide etiquette, do you have any tips or tricks for
hide.
Right?
Well, I do say that it's. I often say this that it's important to bring a snack.
Oh, sure.
Sometimes you're in there and tummy's grumbling a little bit, and it can grumble loud enough to actually frighten the birds away. And the only thing you can do to solve that problem is a tasty little snack.
But if you're...
Now, are we talking about foods here like a fresh Pink Lady apple, or maybe pork rinds, or Pop Rocks, or are those foods we should actually stay clear of?
Maybe the Pop Rocks are a little loud, so maybe not those ones. I guess the other ones can be a little loud too. So, I mean, the apple's really not too loud.
My pool boy Trevin's got me on this carnivore diet. It's been unbelievable for me. But,
I mean, jerky, that's a nice quiet snack.
Sure.
Or a delicious, Rice Krispie treat with you can see the marshmallows kind of melted.
I actually like to use pure gels, energy gels.
You are talking about these snacks. You brought in this crinkly snack, and it was obviously on the mic. Is this the type of thing you're going to be doing in a hide when you're looking at birds? Because I would think they'd be all frightened away.
Looks like we're putting Tim on the spot here.
I mean, maybe you bring a little suet cake in your pocket, and you can, bait them, draw them in with that.
Sure, yeah. Any tips and tricks on checking out the red-crested nuthatch from a hide?
I think if you're in that hide or blind, making sure that you have vantage points from a variety of angles so that you can still be birding by ear and maybe swiveling with your partner. I know that Zan, when I was in with Zan, I would be in the squat position, and when he would want to move 90 degrees.
Now that applies for most likely every bird, Martin. We are looking for specifics on the red-breasted nuthatch, so that wasn't that helpful, but thank you. Tim, anything for the red-breasted nuthatch you think in particular birders should know when in a hide looking for the bird?
Well, I think if your hide is in a desert or a big open grassland, that might not be the best spot to position your hide, because these red-breasted nuthatches do like trees. And spend most of the time on trees. So,
sure,
if you want to catch one, you're really going to have to set up shop somewhere with some trees that are in view of the blind. Yeah.
Go for the trees. And are there any jokes you'd tell? I know that morale can be an issue. Obviously, we both experienced that, and when we were in the hide, Martin, earlier looking for birds. Are there any jokes you think that might be good, birder appropriate? That you know of?
Well, then I always like to keep a couple boiled peanuts, in the shell in my pocket. And sometimes in the hide, spending that long with even a close birding partner, things can, the people can get on each other's nerves a little, aggravate each other a few moments. So just to kind of lighten the mood, I usually like to kind of pull those out and say, here you go. Would you mind hatching this for me? Just to kind of have a little nuthatch reference in there.
Right. I remember when you made that joke, and I gotta say it is a funny one. So thanks for that, Martin. And Tim, any jokes you've told in a hide that?
I honestly am not much for humor, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
But I will say I do have some birding partners that I frequently go birding with, who they really do enjoy limericks.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
that really can just help the time fly by. If
Perhaps some poetry in the hide.
yeah, for some reason, it's not a particular birdie day. Hearing a few good limericks will really
Sure.
set your spirits soaring.
I think that that's a good tip or trick. And with that, we're gonna take a break. 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 And we're back here on Aviary Paragraph, with a new segment known as Grouse, Gull, or Maple. This is a personal favorite segment of mine. It's something I've been working on for a long time. Obviously, I haven't been birding that long, but I do enjoy birding. So I run into some issues I've noticed lately. There are some different things out there that you can sort of identify as being, let's say, a scoter. But then you're actually looking at a log. Or you could say, hey, what is that thrush? And ultimately, that's a rock.
You know, Zan, in the birding circle that I run in, we call those stick birds. And personally, I found that even great birders, it's not something you grow out of. Great birders are still spotting stick birds. And I think, and maybe this might be a little controversial, but I think if you're not spotting stick birds, making those small mistakes, think of all the actual birds that you're missing.
Sure.
I personally have used, every once in a while checking out something you think is a bird and ends up being a stick or a rock, just to be a sign of a really observant birder. Call it a cautionary tale.
I've actually noticed that when I do identify a bird and then I find out that it's a rock, I'm pleasantly surprised, because I was thinking, why is that bird standing so still? Is something wrong with that bird? And then lo and behold, the bird isn't there. There never was a bird to begin with. That's.
I can't help but think about the time I was birding with you, and we thought at first that we were seeing a bird, and then we said no, it's really probably just a small stone. We were actually hiking on Mount Rainier, and between Second and Third Burroughs Mountain, and then we said, oh no, it's just a stone, but let's just check just to be sure. And we indeed, when we got our binoculars on it, what we thought was a bird and then thought was a stone turned out to be a juvenile lark. So really, I think big reward for maybe thinking that it was just a stone, but then investigating a little farther and finding truly terrific bird, high up in the mountains.
Sure. And sometimes it can be said it is more fun actually if you see a rock or something like that, and just to imagine if it was a bird. If you aren't seeing anything, I would say, why not try just imagining a bird is there? So maybe if you do see a log and it's a log, just change it into a bird.
Could be a good exercise to kind of think about, okay, if this had to be a bird, what bird would it be? And see if you can really narrow it in, and then kind of pull out any field guide that you like. Maybe
except
your
for
favorite
probably
guide.
not Sibley's though. And when I ultimately, I think that information that information that about the birds that I imagine are there in those locales, that could be technically useful information. And so on my eBird account, actually, I've been logging in the stick birds, as you would say.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that, Zan. That is kind of disrupting the whole citizen science project that is eBird, and I think is a little disrespectful to both the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and other eBirders, really all eBirders out there. Tim, I don't know if you want to kind of weigh in on this one, reporting birds that you definitely didn't see, but going ahead and reporting them to eBird. Is that a proper use of eBird? I know you're an avid user.
No, I would say that is probably the most disdained action individual can take within the eBird community. And there's a special place in hell for birders who string birds like that.
Zane, I know there's been quite a few apologies in this episode that really the three of us have all had to give, but I think that the apology this time is just one that you owe to both me and to Tim and to our listeners.
And to the birding community as a whole.
Thank you very much. That was grouse gull or maple, and we will see you after this next break. Thank you. Welcome back. Hey, it's Zan here at Avian Paragraph, and I'm here with Tim, obviously. And Tim, we prefaced this earlier that you had a funny tale to tell us, or perhaps some sort of interesting tale. I wasn't sure whether it was either of those things, so I'm kind of looking to you to fill in the gaps. Is it interesting?
I hope so.
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't say it's funny. 'Cause,
Okay.
I'm really not much for humor.
That's
but,
right. I'm sorry.
We'll find out. When we get our hopefully get some listener emails and
Yeah.
get some input, some feedback.
Well, the emails are already coming in on this one, so.
That's amazing. I haven't even told the story yet.
But by the time the listeners are listening to this, they will have already heard the story that you just told, and so emails will be rolling in after this, following this.
Yeah, I would say that's correct. And,
So what's your birding tale, Tim?
well, one of my favorite birding locations is Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife
classic.
Refuge, right in the South Puget Sound, the estuary of the Nisqually River,
Yeah.
which has its headwaters in Mount Rainier, and it is a great birding area. One of the
Well, I love to bird, so you'll probably find me there.
I hope so. That refuge is one of the highest species counts of any hotspot in the whole state, and you can see a lot of really rare and interesting birds. One bird I really do enjoy and look for every time I go there is the American bittern. Really difficult bird to find. Extremely cryptic. Has unique behaviors that make it even more secretive than a normal heron, which is related to.
I've heard about this bird. It's got a cult following.
Yeah, there's the very, very common great blue heron, and those are all over Nisqually. But every birder really, every time they go to that refuge is really keeping their eye out for bitterns because they're known to frequent there, but are extremely difficult to see. So
I've seen quite a few actually there.
Really?
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe. Yeah.
Well, you should get on eBird because I've seen quite a few.
I am on eBird.
Yeah. Well, check it out. Check out my profile because.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. But so, anyways, I was with a colleague from work, and we had decided to take a break from our work duties and go enjoy a stroll out at the refuge.
Yeah, something fun to do.
We're trying to get as many species as we can.
Did you have a pedometer on at the time, or
what?
A pedometer?
No, she may have had a pedometer. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So you probably have a recording of the number of steps you took on the stroll.
I believe we do. I believe I could get that information if you're curious.
I'll have that info in the show notes for our listeners.
Well, then, yeah, I'll make sure to follow up and get that information for you.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're walking along, trying to get as many birds. We were having a pretty good day of birding out there.
Yeah.
and a middle-aged woman walks up to me.
Oh boy.
She sees my scope and my binoculars.
Yeah.
And, she can pretty easily ascertain that I'm out there looking at birds. It's a popular birding area. Not an unfamiliar sight.
Right.
So I'm walking along, and she comes up to talk to me and says, "Oh, right over there, there's a great blue heron." And,
Were you excited? I mean, that must have been a real treat.
no, they're actually one of the most common birds at the refuge.
Right.
And,
I knew that. I'm
very
sorry.
nice lady. She means well.
Right.
But, if she was a real birder, she wouldn't be that interested in a great
Totally.
blue heron. Let's just be honest here. Anyway, so she...
Tim, I do have to stop you there and just say that I consider myself a real birder, and I still enjoy, looking at American robins and looking at great blue herons, and I'm gonna put it out there.
Do you get excited, though?
I do get excited, because for me, Tim, it's not just
don't
about
think you
creating
do.
a species list, but observing really fabulous behaviors. Like the time I got to stand, I was watching a Canada goose for about 20 minutes, and it had been just standing in one spot, and then it coughed. And I thought to myself, wow, I mean, what a treat, what a reward for just standing here waiting, observing the behavior of this bird.
For me, I'm most excited when I'm at REI buying a new piece of gear to go out and bird with.
Anyways, so she's pointing out to the heron, and very nice lady.
Yeah.
I politely entertain her. "Oh, thanks. Good spot."
For sure, right.
And keep walking, and didn't notice while we were talking, my colleague's trying to get my attention.
Oh, geez.
Looking over the south side of the dike, over the
Really?
freshwater marsh.
Wow.
And once the lady continued on her way with a smile on her face, self-satisfied that she had just
Yeah.
given a great birding tip
Right.
to
A great birding tip
fellow
about a
birder.
great blue heron.
About a great blue heron. My colleague informed me that while I was
Classic.
talking to her, I missed a American bittern flying by.
Oh,
a sight
geez.
that I've seen them on the ground.
That must have been really painful.
Never
for you.
seen one in flight. Something I'd always wanted to see, and
Yeah.
I was quite disappointed.
Very painful. I would suggest that you kind of take that and perhaps stuff it down emotionally, and that might help you with this if you kind of keep that to yourself and just forget about it. So this is kind of good because it's been a learning experience for you, a learning experience for me. And
I can't say that I feel like I've really learned much. Just disappointment, I guess, that I missed the flying bittern. Yeah.
definitely. Well, thank you for that, Tim. That was-
I've really been stewing on it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you do. You stew.
Yeah, I just can't help it.
Yeah, I get that.
It just really got.
One time, this
gets me.
guy at the grocery store cut me in line, and I was thinking about it all night long after that. But anyhow, we should probably move on to Mind of a Bird with Martin Salinas. Surprise! Here we are with Mind of a Bird. Martin, you excited about this one?
I am very excited, Sam.
All right, and what bird are we getting in the mind of today?
Today is going to be, here we are in beautiful Oregon,
Sure.
in the Eagle Cap Wilderness, and we've been treated to a number of birds, but the one to me that's been the most prevalent, that's been kind of seeping in to my birding senses, has been the red-breasted nuthatch. And so today we are going to be going into the mind of the red-breasted nuthatch.
Excellent. See you in there.
It's me. No, it's not a picnic. It's not a white-breasted. It's me. It's a red-breasted nuthatch. Now, I'm going down trees. And you got creepers going up trees. But I'm going down. And you got creepers going up. Because it's me, a breasted nuthatch. Now, a pygmy you might find a little bit smaller than me. And a white-breasted maybe just a little bit creative. But me, no. I'm not clean around the edges. I'm going down trees. I'm going down trees. I'm going down trees. Creepers, they're going up. I'm not looking for love. I'm not looking for something else. Nobody really knows. Now you might hear me sound like a harp. You might hear me go once and then twice. Make that sound. Because the red breast nuthatch knows that when you're going down a tree, that's the kind of saying you go, hey, I'm going down trees. Now the pygmy nuthatch, that's a cousin, right? And you don't even want to think about a pygmy nuthatch. That's a bird that you can just set aside and forget about. A white-breasted nuthatch, that's another bird sometimes people get a little too excited about. It's so clean with a white breast all honed up nice, standing out from the bark of the tree in the backdrop of the forest. But I'm there. I'm still there in the coniferous forest, working down the tree bark. No, you saw it going up. You know it wasn't me. That's a creeper. I'm going down. I'm a red-breasted nuthatch. I'm going down trees.
Sort of an alternative look at the red-breasted nuthatch. Thanks with that, Martin. That's great. So that is the end. That is the conclusion of our Eagle Cap special here in beautiful Venus, Oregon. That's Wallowa, Oregon. Here in the Eagle Cap Wilderness. And as always, Timothy Leckley here.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here, Tim. Thanks so much. And Martin Salinas.
Get out there and go bird.
And this is Zan Mars signing off here from AP Studios, which is here in Eagle Cap Special. Thank you.